2.5 million illegals have been removed from our streets in 10 months of Trump's work, ladies and gentlemen. In 10 months. 2.5 million illegals.
Look at this.
And the number of deportations is reaching record highs. When President Trump returned to office, his administration deported over 515,000 illegal migrants, 1.6 million left voluntarily, and agents arrested 485,000. The Department of Homeland Security says Trump may break the United States deportation record by late 2025.
Most interestingly, 1.6 million illegals left voluntarily. That is, the employers whom Trump pressured couldn't provide them with jobs or incomes, so they left.
That the president is results-oriented, just like Secretary Noem. President Trump, Secretary Noem, and our law enforcement agencies have achieved a lot in the past 270 days. Despite bans, political obstacles, sanctuary cities, and activist judges, it's truly extraordinary. 2 million illegal immigrants are leaving the country. This includes 1.6 million deportations and over 500,000 deportations by our Immigration and Customs Enforcement and Customs and Border Protection officers. But we are really going to increase resources. 10,000 new Immigration and Customs Enforcement officers will be hired soon. So we know that we will continue to arrest the worst of the worst on the streets of America's sanctuary cities.
To be clear, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, that is, the Department for Locating and Deporting Illegal Immigrants, has, even though they keep saying he's everywhere, there are only 5,000 employees. 5,000 employees. And look at what they've done in the 6 months they've been doing this and are still doing now. According to the new law, the one Trump calls the Big Beautiful Bill. So the department will hire another 10,000 former military and police officers, basically tripling the number of personnel. So in a year, they could deport at least 1.5 to 2 million illegal immigrants. The main task is deporting illegal immigrants, primarily the criminal element. And naturally, Trump is handling it brilliantly. What about his other promises, like cleaning out the bureaucrats from the swamp?
To curb inflation, we have reduced the size of the government for the first time in many years, and we are waging a total war on waste, fraud, and abuse like never before. Since January, 100,000 federal bureaucrats have departed.
100,000 bureaucrats have been fired. 100,000 bureaucrats have been fired. On average, Trump actually promised to fire 800,000 in total. On average, their salaries, maintenance, benefits, parking, electricity, and so on, including garbage removal, all add up. Each Washington bureaucrat costs us an average of $200,000 per person. Laying off 100,000 of these cuties means saving $20 billion a year. Without any loss in service quality, ladies and gentlemen, without any loss in service quality.
As many of you may remember, when President Trump first returned to the White House about 10 months ago, he was literally surrounded by an endless stream of informants and saboteurs from within the federal government. Now, however, these days, most of those problems have been resolved, or rather, fired. So, really, with the firing of each of these 100,000 federal employees, not only do all of us, the federal taxpayers, save a ton of money, importantly, all anti-American obstacles are being systematically removed from within the federal government. And you know what? If you work in the federal government and you don't fully support President Trump's America First agenda, you should be fired. That's my opinion. But then, as if all that wasn't enough, President Trump recently made 2 more major breakthroughs. You see, since taking office, President Trump has revoked more than 80,000 visas that were held by various anti-American foreigners. And he reduced the H-1B visa quota for highly skilled workers for 2026 by about 25%, which ultimately frees up more space for real Americans in our American universities and more space for real Americans in our American workforce.
Chinese and Russian intelligence agents, also known as spies, have been found and deported. People who forged documents when entering here or lied about something in immigration papers have been found and deported. Companies arrange for people to be transferred to the United States, bringing in cheap foreign workers and pushing out United States citizens from their jobs. They reported to immigration that they were bringing in unique specialists, so they were required to hire them from abroad. These people are also being deported. That is, we are doing everything possible to make sure America comes first in America. In Italy, it should probably be Italy first, and in Armenia, Armenia first. Trump is hindered by the fact that there is a principle in the Senate called the filibuster. By the way, if you like my videos and want to get more quality content, subscribe, hit the bell, and share the video with your friends. And also, don't forget to subscribe. So, a filibuster is the Senate's right to endlessly debate any bill, and the minority uses this to prevent the passing of bills that, well, the minority really doesn't like. We go at it too. So the first option is to find a compromise, or basically to change the way the Senate works, meaning to abolish the filibuster. The Democrats abolished the filibuster for judicial appointments, a very specific one, and put a lot of leftists into federal courts, which later allowed Trump to do the same. As soon as we, the Republicans, got Congress, the Senate, it immediately allowed us to appoint 3 justices to the Supreme Court. In my opinion, he appointed them without any resistance. There was nothing they could do, no filibuster. So they also tried to abolish the filibuster as a principle altogether, but 2 Democratic senators said no, and the abolition didn't happen. Luckily for us, I remember how excited I was, practically throwing my hat in the air. There's no doubt that as soon as the Democratic Party comes to power, they'll definitely try this experiment again, which they didn't manage to pull off before, and they'll abolish this principle that's getting in everyone's way. No one doubts they'll do it immediately once they have the majority, since they've already eliminated all previous resistance within the Democratic Party. But this will seriously change the atmosphere in the Senate, which was originally designed not just as 100 elected people elected senators, but as an assembly of representatives of the states, representatives of the governments, and senators were not elected but appointed by the governor. As far as I know, he was generally appointed by the governor or state government, though it may have varied by state. And changing this principle seriously affected the Union of States, and by the Union of States, I mean the United States of America. And abolishing the filibuster rule as well would be a very painful blow to the Republic. But Trump says there is an ideological war going on right now, and he is in it. He is absolutely sure that the Democrats will do it. You are sure the Democrats have done it. They say they will definitely do it. There is no doubt that they have promised. This person says they'll find a stone and throw it at you. They've already done it several times. Everyone says they'll find a big stone and hit your head. So what will you do? The third time you think, what if he's lying now? No, they will do it, of course. I think that
It's time for them to stop the obstruction and just get everyone back to work. They voted for voter identification. They voted against mail-in voting, except for distant military personnel and the seriously ill. No, I would like to see voting in one day. I don't want to see 65 days of voting from everywhere. No, I would like to bring order to the elections at the border. We did a great job. Now we have a great, strong border. I would like to see new immigration rules that could be fair, a lot of power for immigration authorities, more. Boosted efficiency and reliability. They'll have 4 senators from 2 states and achieve it fully. They would have done it if Manchin and Sinema hadn't stood in their way. They would have done it. So if they're going to do it, I would do it before them.
Trump believes that it's urgent to pass a law for voting with paper ballots. that voting should not be electronic, but with paper ballots and showing identification. You come in, show your identification, they check that you're on the list, mark you on that list, give you a ballot, mark that they've given you a ballot, then you go and vote. Democrats are doing all they can to stop it. This is democracy. This is democracy. Even with real IDs and documents, cheating is still possible, just harder. The mafia is Italian, I think. In 2 states, New York and New Jersey, when Kennedy was running against Nixon, they stuffed quite a few ballot boxes, took them away, and brought in their own. It doesn't matter. At least you can monitor it. There are cameras and other options. You can figure something out. But it will be much harder to cheat when everything is done in a proper way like this. Because today, for example, in some places, in some states, people have the right to come and vote over the course of 2 months. That is 2 months before the start when, well, they haven't even finished the pre-election campaigning. The race, the mudslinging, nothing has happened yet. People are voting 2 months early and later wonder if they made a mistake by voting so soon. And of course, you have to vote, I don't know, maybe in 1 day or 36 hours or 72 hours, 48, I don't know. But there should be a specific place, a specific period of time where you have to come and cast your ballot. Except for cases when, let's say, you're disabled and received your ballot at home in advance. Or if you're a soldier somewhere in Antarctica, I don't know, maybe you can drop your ballot in a box there, or maybe you just seal it, I don't know. But that's kind of an exceptional case. That's 0.1%. Everyone else should come and vote. Even abroad, you can come to the embassy and vote, like many other countries do. By the way, now then, so. Trump warns that when the Democrats come to power, they will add new states, Puerto Rico, the District of Columbia, and split California into 2 states to get 6 new Democratic senators. Trump said they will pack the Supreme Court with 25 new unqualified leftist judges. What's important is not their qualifications, but that they are leftists. They judge not by the law, but by their feelings and conscience. They have their own conscience, special and different from ours, and it is by this new different kind of conscience that they judge. They have entirely different morals. Anything that benefits their party, people, group, or similar is considered good. That's what matters. That's what's considered positive. And if it's not a crime, but you want something else, then that's considered a crime. And, says Trump, I'm not making this up. I'm just reminding you that they've already done this important thing. And only the resistance of their own SID, 2 senators, as I told you, has already saved us.
I think now is the time to find out what you really voted for, to understand what you're actually getting.
It seems that's already obvious. Let me show you what's happening. We have something to discuss, so let's get started.
Alright, friends, just take a look at this. By the way, he won. He came out on top. They chose fools, so we're going to have to pay for it. What if he opens government grocery stores? I disagree. You don't like government grocery stores? $1.30 minimum wage. How would that impact businesses? How would they afford to pay those wages? It's about all the policies he's tried. Raising wages and taxes isn't good. The minimum wage doesn't benefit workers, it just raises costs, taxes, and prices. Many will go bankrupt overnight. I'm in a blue state, but I've always been a red. Democrats always destroy, steal, rob, and lie. What are your thoughts about having him for 4 years? All I can do is just swallow it and try to deal with it, but it's not easy. Exactly. Who's going to pay for it now? How am I supposed to afford $1.30 minimum wage? Wait, I have to compete with government-subsidized grocery stores. How am I supposed to do that? Well, good luck, New York. You just elected an economically illiterate socialist with no experience, living off a trust fund, to run your city. What do you think will happen?
Yeah, now you have to pay any school kid with no experience, any janitor who can only do that and does it badly, $30 an hour. If you pay a worker that amount per hour per week, so 40 hours for full-time in a year, 52 weeks you're paying $62,400 specifically to that person. That also includes expenses for various national and city taxes. In total, that means you spend around $72,000 a year. But that's not all. So $72,000. Just to have a complete slacker and lazybones. Maybe you fire him, start looking for a new one, but don't forget about the health insurance. As soon as you hire him permanently after the probation period, and you can't just keep firing one after another after probation, it's not beneficial for you either. You keep training people and then firing them. But once you do that, you'll pay about $8,000 more per year for medical insurance. So it's a loss. Young people cost you, let's say, realistically, from $80,000 to $90,000 a year. I won't explain what brings, let's say, $80,000 a year. Let's not go any further. And I would kick you out. If MABDA doesn't come, they open a municipal grocery store next to you where the prices are lower than yours and you go bankrupt.
Of course, you have all these fancy ideas born in a student dorm room, but what works in a student's head obviously doesn't work in the real world.
And really, I think there's a deep irony here.
You know, on Victory Night, Mamdani said he was speaking for all the ordinary people, right? All the bodega owners, the Mexican taxi driver's grandmother. Do you remember that moment? I'm talking about Yemeni bodega owners and Mexican abuelas, Senegalese taxi drivers and Uzbek nurses, Trinidadian cooks and Ethiopian aunties. But obviously that's not the case. You can see this directly in the exit poll data, which includes numbers on education level and voting behavior.
And overwhelmingly, those with bachelor's degrees are the ones who voted for Zoran Mamdani.
Ordinary people who work hard to make ends meet? Yeah, they didn't vote. That tells you everything you need to know. But Zoran says he represents ordinary people, yet he's really appealing to elites who won't be affected by these politicians. He's talking to those who want to show off their virtue, not to those who will actually shop at these government grocery stores. They will never end up standing in line for bread. You know, I have this clip with Batya Ungar Sargon.
She explains it very clearly.
His voters were Muslims, people from South Asia, and also those 20 to 30-year-old overly educated, overly qualified, socially downgraded hipsters in Bushwick and Brooklyn who consider themselves working class because they couldn't get, well, amazing jobs and have student debt from getting, one degree after another. They have a huge disdain for labor, and as a result, they want something from the government. Even though they are kind of the most privileged people on planet Earth, Mamdani, their avatar, is a guy who is like a total Nepo baby and has never worked a day in his life. He lives off his parents, but he makes it seem cool, like it's actually cool to do that. You can be a total loser if you can create great content for social media. Actually, they don't want him to do any of that. They would never have thought about shopping at Valdi. Forget about the free supermarket. These are people who spend $12 on iced coffee. These are people who spend $12 on iced coffee.
Exactly. He's appealing to a completely different audience. Overeducated, downwardly mobile hipsters in their 20s and 30s who consider themselves working class because they have student loans. Absolutely right. That's his base. And ordinary people? Well, they're about to be wiped out of damn existence. As I've said, we're in a dangerous moment. Years of inflation and poor policies caused what seemed like intentional economic harm to the next generation. This is the perfect ground, because when people face these economic hardships, they are much more susceptible to promises of free things. And all these generous government handouts? The classic phrase, "the government is here to help," sounds nice, sounds heroic on paper, but it's just empty promises. People are falling for it, and skilled politicians like Zoran Mamdani exploit this.
This highlights where the Republican Party is currently failing.
The real solution isn't big government or more government help, but you being able to do more for yourself.
Here's another difference between a collectivist, meaning a weak person, and a Catholic. They're always waiting for someone to help them. An individualist, a strong person, and a collectivist. He wants someone, the government, parents, the police, anyone, it doesn't matter who, to make things good for him. And he gets terribly offended and nervous and cries and sulks and so on when, from his point of view, he doesn't get what he thinks he deserves. He gets really upset. But for an individualist, it's a different story. Yes, he wants to be left alone. He wants his property, what he earns, not to be taken away from him. He wants to be able to do good for himself, his family, and his loved ones. Me, myself, or someone for me, me, myself, or someone for me. Simple and clear.
Until yesterday, we had the worst mayor in the world, that's true, in London. But America, well, New York just said, yeah, hold my beer. And here comes Mamdani. This will be a truly priceless spectacle since Mamdani has never run a Welk store. Welk stores offer daily discounts or similar deals. He's never managed anything. He's over 30, he has zero experience, but he's brilliant. He's a brilliant politician. He's brilliant at promising great things. He's in some ways the promised land. The problem is, he won't be able to keep any of those promises. Socialism doesn't work.
We thought, says the Brit, that the worst mayor in the world was in London. Well, you Americans have just outdone us again.
This never works and never will, so he'll soon start disappointing people. I think the ideology behind him and behind wokeism is dead, and it will come back to haunt him in the party. Because everything he says sounds great, looks great, but none of it can work.
I completely agree with him, with every word he says.
To enter and
Buy private housing in pursuit.
make housing more
Affordable here.
in the United
States. I think it's an interesting policy idea. It's definitely the wrong solution, but it's the right complaint, right? People are struggling to afford life in Manhattan and nationwide. We must reasonably provide a solution. But is more government involvement really the answer given history?
But Mamdani himself is happy. Well, of course he's happy. He doesn't even think about whether he can do what he promised. He achieved that the whole country, the whole world knows about him. Well, probably, so to speak, he's the mayor of the biggest city in the world. He doesn't understand anything about anything. And that's why he doesn't know how hard it is to manage a big organization. Even a sewing club needs to be managed properly. And here there are 20 million people and a budget of 100 billion. It's no wonder Obamchick asked to be his advisor. But what kind of statement did Mamdani make? Right after the inauguration, Zakran hinted that his police, well, the New York police, would be watching Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Let me remind you, Immigration and Customs Enforcement is responsible for catching and deporting illegal immigrants, and arrest Immigration and Customs Enforcement if his police decide that they're breaking some laws. Maybe he'll come up with a law like that, quickly and quietly pass it in the city, that you can't cross the street at a designated place, but only at a non-designated place. If they cross at a designated place, arrest them. His platform is resistance and disobedience to orders from Washington, even if they're completely legal. But, well, Mamdani doesn't like them.
My message to the agents and everyone in this city is everyone will obey the same law. If you break the law, you must be held accountable. Unfortunately, many feel some people, like the president or agents, can break the law without consequences across the country. And what New Yorkers are looking for is an era of consistency, an era of clarity, an era of conviction. And that's what we will provide them.
What is the Mamdani platform? We will hide and protect the illegals. We will block federal agencies from being able to find and arrest them. The city of New York will cease all cooperation with the Trump administration, expel all federal agents and agencies from buildings owned by the city. Mamdani has already announced lawyers for the illegals. He hasn't finalized the budget yet, but he has already announced that he will allocate $165 million. Why 165? What does that mean? Like this? Where is this money coming from? They were stolen from you and me.
In this case, not from us because I live in Los Angeles, but from the working people of New York City. He hasn't won yet, but he won the Democratic primary, Zakran Mamdani. So what he's saying, I mean, it's incredible. He swore to kick out, quote, the fascist immigration and customs enforcement from New York. Okay, so how are you going to handle that? Because I would assume there are a lot of criminals and Iranian cells and things like that in New York. The job isn't done there. What would you say to this guy?
Good luck with that. Jamlu outdoes him constantly. We will be in New York, actually, because it's a sanctuary city. President Trump made it clear a week and a half ago that we're going to double and triple our efforts in sanctuary cities. If we can't arrest a bad guy in the county jail, one agent will arrest one bad guy. They're released onto the streets just like New York does daily. We have to send a whole team to find this guy. Not only that, we will send additional teams to look for all the people they arrest, and we will focus on sanctuary cities because we know they are releasing threats to public safety and national security back onto the streets. So we know we have a problem there. In Florida, we don't have that problem, where most of the sheriffs work with us. So we will just double and triple our efforts in New York. And not only will we send more agents to the area, but we will also increase workplace enforcement tenfold. If we can't arrest them in jail, you force them to be in the area, then we'll find them in the area. If we don't find them in the area, we'll find them at the workplace. So the game is on. We're coming.
And here's what Trump thinks about it. This
guy is a liar. Honestly, in my opinion, he's a complete scoundrel, but, you got me interested.
It's tough to overcome. Here's Donald Trump saying, yes, you know what we'll do? If he doesn't cooperate with the federal authorities, if he obstructs federal law, we'll arrest him.
In my opinion, that's brief and clear. That means we'll have to arrest him then.
We need a communist in this country, but if we have one, I will watch him very closely on behalf of the nation. We send him money, we send him everything he needs to run the government. And by the way, they're already getting it. They're getting about 3 times more than you, Ron. If you look at it per capita, Florida gets 1/3 of what New York gets in terms of numbers. Why don't you give us those numbers? Because that's what we need to send him. Yeah, well, and as people sometimes say, Florida gets more because they count Social Security recipients, but that's not money for the state. Those are elderly people who live here. If they moved to North Carolina, you could count them there. That doesn't involve the state government. They get more from city and state governments than we do, significantly more. We will be watching this very closely, and a lot of people say he's here illegally. He, will check everything. But ideally, he would turn out to be much less than a communist. But right now, he's a communist, not a socialist. Yes, he's a communist. I've always said we won't have socialism here. In my speeches, I ask if they've missed socialism. And you have a lot of people like that. And you see Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, she's there with her, low intelligence quotient. She's shouting and raging about how great he is. And look, as long as he's winning, he still has a race to win. But for now, he's winning, and he has the advantage. Like a Democrat in New York, I was there a long time ago, and it's been a long time. It's been a long time since a Republican won in this city. It's been a long time since a Republican won the city.
America, during the time of the Pilgrims, tried socialism, well, almost communism. After 2 years, the settlers started dying from hunger. Google Plymouth in New England, 1620. So, the failure of collectivist farming or collective farming showed America that it's a dead end. You can't go that way. But the youth, our youth, American youth, New York youth, have been dumbed down from kindergarten to university. And the longer they studied in American and European educational institutions, the dumber they became. And they chose Kumnyaka, a man who has never worked a day in his life, an absolute and complete failure, but with the gift of eloquence. They got everything mixed up. I think that a person who speaks beautifully will make a great leader. That's what political democracy is. Any goat that knows how to bleed in harmony with the herd, so to speak, gets chosen as the leader. So someone who was a nobody became a mayor, a senator, a president. I've already shown you part of Mamdani's inauguration speech. Here it is again. So his threats to the despot Trump to put an end to, I don't know how to put it, with the capitalism that raised Trump. And if there is.
And if there's a way to scare
a despot,
then it's to destroy the conditions that allowed him to accumulate power. That's not only how we stop Trump, but also how we stop the next one.
that's how we stop the next despot capitalist. You just won't be able to communicate on social media at all. As I remember, that's exactly what happened, right? They just shut down all his accounts and everyone who supported him. Suddenly, we were in the Arctic cold as a massive investigation began, collecting 30 million phone records and involving over 400 people, including 92. No, it was over 100 organizations, including my friend Charlie Kirk's, the late Charlie Kirk. Wow. 8 sitting United States senators, a representative from Congress. It's like they wanted to suffocate it. And that's what Mamdani is talking about. That's not good. So, Donald Trump is right when he says, hey, we're serious, and if you're against federal law, we're going to take it seriously. I mean, if you're a communist and you think you can just tax someone or take something from them because you don't like the color of their skin, I mean, that's one of his quotes, right? He's going to tax white neighborhoods. I'm like, sorry, we have a constitution. Like, you actually can't do that. That would actually be a form of racism. Okay, you can't just say, we're going to target this neighborhood. Due to their skin color, that's unacceptable. Also, you can't refuse all cooperation with federal authorities. I think to a certain extent you can say, I won't cooperate, but you can't obstruct and interfere. And that's what he's talking about. If you listen to part of his speech last night, he said, we don't know. We're a city of immigrants and we're going to have all the immigrants. And blah, 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 blah. And he made it clear that he is not going to cooperate with Trump in any way. And it's not just about Trump. These are the federal authorities, immigration and customs enforcement and Congress. This is how they are. They don't understand anything. A bunch of ignoramuses. Anyway, you get Stephen Miller, who spent 4 years in the country studying the law and knows a lot. Here, talking about this issue in relation to California, but it also applies to New York and Illinois. I want him to explain this. Look.
This was not a loophole. The Biden administration, Secretary of Homeland Security Alejandro Mayorkas came up with a scheme to bring illegal immigrants into the country and then move them across the border by the millions and give them so-called parole, which gives them work permits, which gives them social security, which gives them benefits, which gives them access to the ballot box. That was the plan from the very beginning, to bring them here illegally so they could get free government benefits, get hooked on welfare, and participate in American elections. This was an attack on democracy by the Democratic Party. It's the same attack we're seeing. Sean, when you have a sanctuary state like California that refuses to even turn over illegal alien criminals to immigration and customs enforcement, so these are illegal immigrants in California who were arrested by California police, California law enforcement for serious crimes. They refuse to turn these illegal alien criminals over to immigration and customs enforcement. Instead, they release them back into the cities so they can commit crimes again and again. By any definition, what California is doing is a crime. It's a violation of our laws. This is one of the most terrible things I've ever seen.
Yes. Okay. This is happening in California. It's happening in Chicago. And now it's going to happen in New York. So Mamdani said all these really nasty things about Donald Trump last night. It's like his whole reason for existing was just to be against Trump. I like that, the president responded. Here it begins.
The visor is up, the masks are off, the swords are drawn. It's White's move, ladies and gentlemen, even though it's not a popular color, but it's our move, Mr. Mamdani. Of course, the sly one didn't say anything that would mean he gave the order. With this order, immigration and customs enforcement can't arrest anyone. Someone in this mess is going to get physically hurt, and the mayor of New York will ride in an iron cage on a cart through the towns and villages of our republic, which consists of many countries and states, to the delight of boys with slingshots. He will go to trial in. No, gentlemen, he won't go to Washington. He'll be taken to Texas or Florida. Poor, poor New York. Poor, poor New York. Maybe it's necessary for something huge to collapse so that the rest of the people in our wonderful country, well, they'd rub their eyes and say, wow, so that's how it is. And on their own skin, or on the skin of their brothers, sisters, neighbors, and so on, they'd realize that you can't go there. That's a dead end. Such a dead end, so stinky, so nasty. But nobody learns from someone else's experience. Nobody. And even from their own, they hardly learn. From others, not at all. That's all, ladies and gentlemen. Until next time.